Yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Economies and Neighbourhoods panel this afternoon. I'm just going to start off by introducing myself. So my name's Harpreet. I'm the chair of the Economies and Neighbourhoods Scrutiny panel, and I'll just go around the panel members firstly. So Gwen.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Gwen, Councillor Lowe, Councillor for Batley West.
Thank you, Gwen. Yusra.
So Councillor Yusra Hussain for Batley West as well.
Thank you. Robert. You just unmute, Robert.
Right, that's my first for today. Good afternoon, I'm Councillor Robert Ido from the Gorka Ward.
Thank you. Chris.
Hi, Chris Friend. I'm a co-optee member of the committee.
Thank you. And Andrew?
Andrew Bird. I'm a co-opted member of the committee as well.
Thank you. Now, I think that's all the panel members. I'm just having a quick look at the... no, I think I can see Councillor... Yeah, Martin?
Yep, Martin Bolt from Murfield. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. I think, let me just have a look through this list. We've got a lot of people and I can't see everyone. I just want to make sure I'm not excluding anyone. I think that's everyone. I think someone would have spoken up if there's another panel member here, but I think that's everyone. Okay, thank you, panel members. Does anyone have any interest to declare? No? Okay. Martin, did you want to say something there?
No, sorry, Chair.
No. Okay, thanks. So if members do have any interests, there is a form that you can fill in. So hopefully, if something comes to mind, please just fill in the form. Sorry, I've got some loud traffic outside, so apologies if you're able to hear that today. This item is in public, so it is available via YouTube, so members of the public can listen via YouTube. Minutes of the previous meeting. Can I get someone to approve and second those? Councillor Taylor?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And Gwen? I see a couple of hands up, so I'm just going to check.
Yeah, happy to second, Happy
to second. I'll just quickly check with Chris and Andrew if they had any other matters that they wanted to raise. Chris?
Yes, on page 7 of the package we got, that's the third paragraph from the top. It says, it was also noted that the development of the plan was to take place over a 60 period. We need some sort of definition there, years, months, whatever.
Yes, absolutely. We'll get that clarified. I think it's probably just a mistake there, but thank you, Chris. And Andrew? I think you're on mute, Andrew.
My mistake on the buttons. Apologies.
No problem. Oh, you've just got your hand up accidentally, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, no problems.
Happy, you've gone on mute.
Sorry, everybody. Sorry. I said we've had those minutes approved then, and except for the point where we need to figure out what that 60 period is, which I don't know at the moment, Chris, but we'll get that clarified as well. So thanks for that. So just going to go back to the agenda. Apologies. So deputations and petitions, we haven't received any of those. I've already said that the meeting's in public, and on public question time we haven't received any questions either. So we're going to move on to an update on the cultural heart. So firstly, I'm just going to ask if one of the cabinet members want to say anything before we move into the item. So do Peter or Paul want to say anything on this point?
To introduce it, Harpreet?
Yes.
Well, the cultural heart is the major feature of the Huddersfield plan. It's the central part. It's very complex, and for that reason, we've employed consultants to guide us about the various elements, their staging, their costing, and so on. pulling all of it together is not going to be easy, and therefore we've involved the consultants, as I said. We're aware of the complexities, but the scheme or the overall proposal is very ambitious. It should hopefully transform the whole centre of Huddersfield, in fact, becomes the epicentre of the redevelopment of Huddersfield. And I could see, I think when you get more information, you realise that it will transform the whole centre of the town so that we'll have all the centrepieces of a new library or an improved library, plus a music centre. We will have the existing buildings modified. At the moment, we've seen the car park, which has been taken down. It's going to be replaced, not with one quite as large. The whole of the central features of the area will be greened, so the impression created in town will be brilliant. So what we'll get as the meeting progresses is a detailed statement of what the various elements will be and how they will be brought forward over a period of something between 5 and 10 years. Well, nearer to 5 rather than 10. But the point is, the scale of the operation means it will not happen overnight. It's got to be developed and worked in and brought together. And that is the reason we brought the consultants in to ease that exercise.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to pass over to David Glover, and I know David Shepherd's here as well. So I don't know if you want to say something as well right now, or if you'll be leading the presentation with David.
Chair, if I could just a couple of comments, and I think if Councillor Davies on as well, I think he might want to say a couple of words for because it's a cross-portfolio briefing, this one. So if Councillor Davies goes first, Chair, if that's okay, and then I'll say a couple of words, and then we'll get into the presentation.
Okay.
Yeah. No, thanks. Yeah. Certainly. This, for me, is probably one of the most exciting initiatives that we are driving. I think already, as Peter's outlined, it's looking to become a real centrepiece for Huddersfield, but for Kirklees as well. I think there's a real determination to ensure that what we're doing in Huddersfield reflects Kirklees, its people, and our culture, and the measured and controlled approach that's being taken, albeit with an acceleration to make this happen, is firmly in that area. So this isn't about bringing something from on high and imposing it on Huddersfield. It's very much, crucial and key to this that there will be this engagement with our people, and that it is about celebrating what we in Kirklees have to offer, what our people have to offer, and for me that's massively exciting. I think it's a great opportunity in that regard. It's certainly part of building our citizens' self-esteem and confidence that they have, and Kirklees has a real place in the region and even and nationally as well. Because let's not forget that our ambition is not just regional. Our ambition is to be a destination on a national basis as well, and to have that recognition nationally. So for me, a really exciting time in terms of what we're doing in Huddersfield, and I believe from everything we've heard that we have the right team in place with the right skill levels, and as Peter said, with the right people that we brought in to support us in doing this. And crucially, that connection between that team and the administration, but also not just the administration, as I say, with councillors and with our people within Kirklees. So yeah, for me, a fantastic initiative.
Okay, and Chair, if it's okay if I just say a couple of words before David Glover presents to you all. So the first point that I would make is that accelerated delivery is something that Cabinet made very clear, and obviously something that we're keen to discuss with Scrutiny, because we would like to, within the next 5-year period, to have completed the Cultural Heart Programme delivery. And that is quite a tall order. As I've discussed previously, there's a lot of work to do to ensure that we do that effectively and efficiently and make good use of public money, but transform the place so that the wider catchment benefits. What I would say with accelerated delivery, we have ensured, and you will see through the presentation, that Cabinet stays in the driving seat and leads the process all the way through. So there is a gateway process that David will run through with you, and that is designed in order to ensure that the scheme does not progress through each of the gateways until Cabinet are satisfied, and that's absolutely essential. And in my experience, that's something that you absolutely must do with longer term schemes like this one. It has to be led from the political administration. In terms of the scrutiny role, though, this is really helpful in terms of adding value, because as you will see in the presentation, we have a number of gateway reviews that will go to Cabinet, and there are months in between them. In that period, Scrutiny, starting with this particular session, can look back as to what's been achieved since the last Cabinet decision, but you can also look forward, and you, with your particular lenses that you'll be applying to this programme, you can add value to the whole of the process. So from my perspective and the wider team's perspective, this is incredibly helpful, and we're very grateful for the time that Scrutiny have committed, not just to this session, but we're hoping that obviously we will engage in a longer term process here. What I would suggest as well, and it may not come out of the slides, but this is a world-class delivery arrangement that we've assembled here for Kirklees and for Huddersfield Town Centre, both in terms of the council team, but also the private sector consultancy team that we've engaged with in order that we deliver. We have got the best possible team available. From the council side, we've got a lot of experience, certainly from myself and David. The reason that we're here talking to you today is we've delivered schemes like this in the past, so we have a very clear understanding of what is required in order to do that. But at the same time, clearly we need to seek political guidance in order to ensure that we deliver this in a way that makes sense in Huddersfield Town Centre. But also we've assembled, and David will talk to you about it, but we've assembled, as I say, a world-class private sector delivery team who are working alongside us and bringing their experience from elsewhere, alongside that myself and David have got from the various schemes we've been involved in leading and delivering. We won't make any apologies that this will be a little bit going into some of the technical areas, albeit we won't. We will make sure we don't attempt to bamboozle, but we are talking about the nuts and bolts of delivery today. And as Councillor McBride said, there is a time for moving forward to the aspirational vision-led stuff. That's not now. We need to make sure that the arrangements are in place, that we can assure effective delivery of a 5-year accelerated programme. So that's what we want to talk to you about today. So a bit of this is one of my colleagues, Julie Muscroft, talks about doing boring well. Well, that's one of the things that we want to do well here. We want to do boring well. We want to make sure that in the background, all the checks and balances are in place. So we've got the effective delivery arrangements that you can rest assured with. And if we do that, and if we do take people with us on this journey, and we do take the political lead as well, then I think we can all in 5 years' time ensure that we do live up to the values of the council around kindness, pride and inclusion in terms of our town centre here in Huddersfield and what it has to offer and how it relates to the communities that it serves. So those are the things that I would like to say just by way of preliminary introduction. And now, David, if that's okay, Chair, David can talk to you through the presentation.
Could we have the slides up, please, Jodie? So what you're going to see you know, as has already been suggested, that there won't be any images of you know, what might be presented, because we're very much currently in the, you know, the assessment and optioneering phase, and as David Shepherd has just highlighted, basically setting out our, you know, our stall in the best possible way. So the cultural heart, next slide, Jodie, please. The cultural heart, as Councillor McBride set out, is very much part of the Huddersfield blueprint. It exists because of the ambition within the blueprint, and, you know, by way of reminder, it's ambitious 10-year vision to create a thriving modern day town centre that will be busy, family friendly, and stay open longer. The programme was launched in 2019, and the value of £250 million. And a number of those, including the cultural heart, a number of those projects are already underway. Next slide, Jodie. COVID has interrupted all of us. But some progress has been made on the scheme, but the interruption has allowed a rethink to take place. We've all seen the impact on retail, and so a refocus and a review is appropriate. And as I outlined at the beginning, that's basically what we're doing now. And there are emerging core values of accessibility, creating a place to invest in, being inclusive, to improve the social and environmental well-being of residents and visitors, and creating spaces that are welcoming and safe. Next slide, please. Apologies. So the cultural heart, it sits in the Queensgate and Piazza shopping centre area. It's, as already been outlined, it's a key regeneration project for the town, and its purpose is to reset the town centre. Included within the vision, as Councillor McBride touched on, is a new event space and food court, high quality urban park, modifications or new library, the art gallery and museum, improved connections to the university, because there's a huge campus of students there that need to be attracted into the town, and then new car parking to serve the assets. Next slide, please. So on the 22nd of June, Cabinet approved the restart of this project, but that approval was to Gateway 2 only. And so the larger expenditure has not been approved. That has already been outlined, that approval will be sought from Cabinet at a later date. Again, as Councillor McBride touched on, the report that went to Cabinet set out proposals and a strategy for developing the detail of what is a very large and complex project that will require careful assessment and management. And this includes, we're going to follow what's called the Green Book guidance, which is HM Treasury guidance on how to appraise large projects and programs of this nature. So that will involve certain gateways that we need to pass through, and at each of these gateways, Gateway 1 and Gateway 2, Cabinet gets to review and reassess the programme. So Gateway 1 will set out a strategic outline case. When we move on to Gateway 2, it will be a more detailed business case. And all of this is being done on an accelerated timescale, and I cannot stress again the impact, the positive impact that the accelerated program will have in the sense of bringing the assets available for use in the town centre much faster than they normally would be available. We're probably saving in excess of 12 months. Each element of the cultural heart work that has already been done today will be revisited and tested, and during which options for the most appropriate facilities will be considered, including what will go where and when. And so, again, as I open the presentation, that emphasises very much that we're in that assessment and optioneering phase, working out what are the best solutions, the best proposals to bring to Cabinet. When we get to Gateway 2, the outline business case will provide Cabinet with the appropriate information to then decide what elements of the programme, or in fact whether the programme should move into the construction phase. Next slide, please. So the project of this nature, as you can imagine, is outside the normal resources and operation of the council, and so the external team of consultants, people who are well versed in delivering projects of this scale, is being built. We've achieved the first appointment with the strategic development partner or project manager is now on board, and that working with the council staff to build up the council team as well. There's no doubt that this project will take significant resource, both externally and internally, but we're working with the heads of departments to ensure that any backfilling within the council teams is dealt with appropriately. And there on the right hand side is set out, just a reminder that the scheme is over 5 years, and the cultural heart has a value, an estimated value of between 170 and 200 million pounds. Next slide, please. So, as I say, we have the SDP, the Strategic Development Partner, on board, and we were able to commence working on the project 5th of July as planned and programmed. First target being the SOC on the 16th of November Cabinet meeting. In terms of governance, the project board is established and report monthly to Regen PHB. And the ongoing work, consulting with stakeholders in terms of determining the initial brief, procurement of the architects and engineers. The tenders the invitation to tender is currently out, with returns expected on the Thursday of this week. Planning consultations have started, or preliminary planning consultations, and reviewing third-party property rights associated with the Piazza Mall and the service tunnels that service it, and then undertaking initial market analysis and demand with regard to end users' demand and expectations of new facilities, so that we're making sure that providing facilities and assets that the market will want to use. Next slide, please. Amongst quite a number of things, sustainability and social value, are two important aspects of the project that are currently being developed. Obviously, the council has its own policies, so these need to be woven in to the strategy for the cultural heart. But we also need to take on board the fact that some of these assets will or are likely to need, if not external operators, external investors, and sustainability is an expectation now from these types of organisations. So we do need to get this right. One of the very helpful aspects in this regard is that Kirklees already has in process proposals for a town centre heat network and electricity project, which we're already engaged with that team, and the expectation would be that the cultural heart can connect into that system, thereby reducing its carbon footprint quite significantly. On social value, again, we're working up the ask on this, social value deliverables, particularly with the strategic development partner, as I say, who is already on board. And then we've within the invitation to tender to the architects and engineers, we have set up complementary social values so that we haven't got people covering the same ground. And social value, as the bottom bullet point focuses on the ability to increase activity in this area as and when the project moves into the construction phase. Next slide, please. And so we've mentioned gateways quite a lot, and just so that it's clear for people, if you're following the Green Book, there are 6 gateways, and you can see them here at the bottom of the blue train. Gateway 6 takes you into operation. Gateway 1 sets up the strategic or the outline case. And as I've said, that's the phase that we're in at the moment. Listed, I won't go through them all, but listed here the elements that will make up each of these reports, and then the statement at the bottom that as we get to each gateway, the report will go to Cabinet requesting permission to proceed. Next slide, and thank you very much for your time. I've tried to keep that as short as possible so that there are plenty of questions.
Well, thank you very much, David, for that. That was a brilliant presentation. So I'll take members' questions. If you just use the raise hand function on Teams, and also if you're not speaking, please remain on mute, just so we don't get any interference in the background. So I think the first hand that went up was Martin. So Councillor Ball.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks you
very much. Thanks for the presentation. And as you would expect, it does set a few questions. The officers talked about the links and oversight by Cabinet. That isn't it embedded and evident in a lot of the recommendations, and one of the presentations talked about the project board, and it's quite right that an officer should probably chair it, but at all levels in this, such as if we take the delegation agreement, that on page 17, 5.2, the delegation agreement to make all necessary appointments in compliance with contract procedure rules, etc. So a full delegation agreement is to a director. A recommendation or cabinet involvement would be that there was a small but significant phrase inserted in these things, in consultation with the cabinet member. We don't see that at all. There's not the accountability and involvement of cabinet enshrined in these decisions, and I would like cabinet and the officers to consider that yeah, they've mentioned how much cabinet is involved, and that needs to be clearly placed in this. When Peter was doing his introduction, he talked about things being greened, and we've heard that before. Nowadays, we should be able to measure that and quantify it. What does it mean? Because we have a climate emergency motion, we have tree policies. What does greening mean? What's going to be a measurable impact? The car park will change in the future, but we haven't had any details about the capacity of the new car park. Most of the time, the car park probably operates under capacity, but at key points, such as during the choral season in the town hall, graduations at university, we need town centre parking close at hand. And I'd like some surety that the capacity has been properly considered, otherwise those areas will suffer. There was talk, ironically, about destination recognition. And this is something that I was speaking about last week, Chair, because as I'm sure everybody will be aware, Transport for the North brought out their review last week about the visitor economy and transport for the north of England. There isn't one single visitor economy asset in Kirklees. Kirklees doesn't appear on TfN's map, and it's a very hackneyed phrase, you know, we're putting things on the map, and I've taken the mickey out of that, but here we are, the TfN report. Leeds is mentioned, Bradford, Doncaster, Cleethorpes, etc. But Kirklees as an entity, and the largest element being Huddersfield, doesn't even get a dot on the map for its existence. And we have lots of key tourist destinations in the area. So this is an area that we do need to pick up, and I fully agree that we want destination recognition on it. And I'd like to know if there are any changes, if we're going ahead with the cultural heart, what changes, if any, will there be to the blueprint announced in 2019? Anything that's dropping off the end? And again, it was mentioned that we're going to be drawing down from internal and external services. And with regards to internal services in particular, if resources are being pulled into Huddersfield for this cultural heart project over the next few years, which areas will those resources be taken from? In other words, who's going to miss out on it, Chair? That'll do for now, thanks.
Thank you very much. 1, 2, 3. I think there's about 6 points there. So I don't know who wants to come back first. Yeah, David Shepherd. Yeah.
I'm happy to, if that's okay, Chair. So thank you very much, Councillor Bolt, for your series of points there. In terms of links and oversight, as I've mentioned and David Glover mentioned in the presentation, there is clear Cabinet oversight with regards to the decision-making process, which are linked to the gateway reviews. And those gateway reviews are fundamental in getting agreement to proceed to the next stage, agreement to commit further finance to the programme, an agreement to commit further resource and ensure that Cabinet take a clear oversight of that. As has already been mentioned as well, there is a direct route in through to the Cabinet portfolio holder through Councillor McBride's briefing as well, which happens on a regular basis to ensure that we don't just wait until those Cabinet meetings, that there is a clear engagement throughout. Clearly, as you've mentioned, Councillor Bolt, there is a technical process, and I would maintain that it is appropriate for officers and consultants to work through that technical process, because my advice to any councillor would be that is my experience of where we deliver best and we get the best engagement through the process. And the recommendations in terms of delegations were made because one of the key issues that Cabinet wanted to assure was accelerated delivery. It wasn't to separate out the decision-making control, because clearly, as I've set out, that rests with Cabinet and the administration. It was in order to ensure that we could effect the accelerated programme that we've discussed to you today, and to ensure that could continue. So that would be my response to those particular issues. In terms of the greening, there will be measurable impact, and I think this is an absolutely critical point that Councillor Bolt raises, and it is one that does need to be worked through, because it's okay to deliver these schemes, but we need to ensure that they're delivered in a way that makes environmental sense, but also increasingly makes financial sense, because ultimately, a successive administration in future years might want to decide whether they retain all or elements of this scheme, or they want to dispose of elements of this scheme. In order to do that in today's financial market, we have to build to exacting environmental standards. Investment arrangements are no longer interested in built forms that don't meet with exacting financial conditions, because a lot of investment companies understand that isn't the way that financial markets are going, and that's not the way that regulation's going. So to build in resilience for the future it makes financial sense. Never mind, it obviously makes a sense given this council's commitment to the net zero carbon arrangements for 2038. However, as Councillor Bolt says, we need to understand what the elements of the scheme are to then be able to set out, well, what are the measurements going to be? So I would expect one of the things that we will want to do is make this development ready to plug into any district heat network that might be developed in Huddersfield Town Centre in the future. We want to future-proof it in that way, so that energy it comes from the greenest possible sources, and that it is sustainable in all of its uses. We want to make sure that the built form, the fabric first approach, is applied to all of this development, that we're not just looking at sort of a snap-on goodies approach to achieving net zero carbon or any particular badge along that way, but we build new buildings and refurbish existing buildings in a way that ensures that they are ideally contributors to the grid in terms of energy production and limit their carbon emissions as a result of that. If not, that they limit their energy take significantly because of the way that these buildings are put together. In addition to the buildings, though, there are clear issues around who uses the scheme. So we want to draw people in from the Huddersfield and wider catchment. We don't want people to be going further afield to get their services. We want them to come as close as possible, and we want to be able to put in place a travel plan, irrespective of who the people are who are coming into Huddersfield Town Centre, that they can do that in a sustainable way as possible. As we develop this programme, I would envisage we will also be developing a transport plan that sits alongside this, that ensures that those people who are able to make use of active travel arrangements can do so in a welcoming and safe and inclusive way that allows them to do so. And those people who need to continue travelling by car have the means to do so. Picking up on Councillor Bolt's point around parking, part of ensure that we have the appropriate number of EV charge points as part of the development moving forward. There are a number of other issues that we will deal with in terms of the sustainability aspects of this scheme, but they will come out as the scheme develops and progresses, and we know exactly what is going to be built and where it's going to be built and how it's going to be managed and heated and how people are going to engage in it. But I think it's an absolutely critical point that Councillor Bolt makes to raise now, to set the standards, for members to set the standards as to what members expect with developments of this, given that this will, in no uncertain terms, this is going to be a flagship project, not just for Huddersfield but for Kirklees. So it needs to be a flagship in every single sense. In terms of the TFN review, I would say it's regrettable that there aren't any additions, but part and parcel of this programme is to ensure that in future Huddersfield and Kirklees aren't missed off anybody's maps, that there is a destination that people choose to come to because there is an offer there that meets with their exacting requirements. And as people have more choice to conduct a lot of their life online or in drive-to centres, we need to make sure that what we offer in Huddersfield Town Centre is far better than those arrangements, and this investment intends to do just that. And in terms of the final couple of points, changes since the blueprint was announced in 2019. Well, what we've set out there is we're trying to fit with the core arrangements of the blueprint, but inevitably as we move forward and we found out more about the site itself, There will be perhaps positional changes as to where some of the where some of the offer goes within this site, because it'll go where it's best to for the long term, and you only find that out as you start to interrogate more about the built environment and you understand more of that. But with the process that I've set out, I'm absolutely confident that members will be fully appraised of any changes that happen with regards to the blueprint. But what we do want to do is keep with the aspiration and the principles in the blueprint that David set out at the beginning of the presentation. And the final point in terms of draining internal services, it's a spot-on point that Councillor Bolt makes, because the reason that we've set this up in this way with the strategic development partner is to ensure that we limit or eliminate the potential for draining those services from other areas, because we have a lot of regeneration programs on across Kirklees. We've got programs in Dewsbury, we've got the smaller towns programs that are coming to a town near you soon, and we have a number of other programs in place within the town centre, not to mention getting underway with the Station to Stadium Enterprise Corridor as well. So it's a big number of years coming up in terms of delivery. We've talked in the past about a decade of delivery. We're really into that now in Kirklees. We're starting to see the shape of our town centres change markedly, with developments like 103 New Street coming online, and the university will be building on Southgate soon as well. But we need to make sure, as Councillor Bolt says, that we don't slow delivery elsewhere, that we add value with these strategic development arrangements that we've set out to you today, which is why we've gone through the process of establishing what I mentioned as a world-class team that are working alongside the officer team here, and making sure that other officers such as Simon Taylor and others who are on the call are available to keep delivering the rest of the regeneration programme, and David Martin and his services are available to deliver the rest of the council's capital programme. Sorry that was a long-winded answer, but I think there were at least 6 questions in Councillor Bolt's question there.
Yeah, they were, and you've covered all the questions there. I'm just going to ask. I see Peter and Paul have got their hands up. I don't know if one of you want to respond particularly to that accountability point, and then I do want to bring the other panel members in. Peter, I can see you talking, but you're muted.
I want to make a general response. I mean, David's answered in very great detail. I think what we've got to realise is the size, the scale, and the complexity of the operation that we've set in motion. And it was quite early on we drew a conclusion. We ourselves wouldn't manage it that well without bringing in some expertise. So we brought in consultants to enable us to ensure a new library, a new art gallery, a new music centre, a new museum, a new eating centre, all of that could be put together, reshaping the whole town centre against the backcloth of all towns being challenged in terms of their future size. So that is a very complex question to pose. Therefore, it was very sensible to have some expertise at hand to guide us. But what we are guaranteed is, from that expertise, we are regularly going to get feedback to ensure we are in control of the whole process and delivery of the programme. And I'm confident we can, as David has outlined.
Okay, thank you. Paul, did you want to say anything right now?
Yeah, just really to back up some of the comments there. I think David did a great job of covering the points, and certainly Peter's talked a little bit about the accountability. I think just to give some very clear, straightforward assurances, we as a cabinet absolutely understand and take on board the accountability for this major regeneration project, and certainly myself as a portfolio holder, and I know Peter absolutely take that accountability on board. What we've asked for and has been delivered by David Shepherd, that is a rigor around how we program manage this and drive this going forward. And as an, if you like, an executive, and from my past experience, in my past career, that is what you expect, the leadership team to have provided to them, and that's what we have. What I wouldn't expect I have to say, is to be involved in some of the decisions which rightly sit with the directors, because otherwise we do end up, if we're not careful, micromanaging areas which would then delay the project. It's a fair point the councillor Bolt raises. I'm not disputing at all the fact that we have to ensure that as a cabinet that we are clearly right at the heart of the decision making, but it's the decision making at the right level. So I personally, and I know the cabinet as a whole, believe that we have that. I'm grateful for David for bringing that, as I said, that rigor on board. I think that backed up certainly with external support, is essential. And just as well, and David will know this because I've raised this in meetings, what I've been very clear is that we are not going to be driven, and we will not be driven by external consultants. Those external consultants work for us. We drive the direction. We drive where we go in. So we're very clear on that, and David has absolutely the same view. So just wanted to give that assurance.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Idale.
Thank you, Chair. I've got to agree that it is vital for Huddersfield that we get this right. Even starting with the hotel that used to be members, some of us remember as member services. But when we talk about getting it right, we are both 3.2 and 3.3 of the report. We have selected stakeholders, and on 3.3, engaging town centre stakeholders, businesses and users. Who are they? Because they are the people who will, at this stage, will shape the project. And you've also mentioned what this intelligence, someone with market-based information. Who is giving this initial market-based information for us to start on this project? Because you are quite correct. Huddersfield needs to be a destination. Huddersfield and Kirklees need to be destinations, and we need to work on getting it right for all types of visitors, whether they're car, bus, elderly, cyclists. Some of this has already been touched on. I'm very, very pleased to see about the climate change. I might get away with it, but as we talked about earlier, my grandchildren and great grandchildren will if we don't get the climate right, or what we've said is a total waste of time. Apart from the heat and electricity network, what other things are we thinking about at this very early stage? I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. And I think that's a good point you make about how we're feeding in all the stuff around sustainability across the project. So who wants to come back on those points? Yes, Mr. Shepherd, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm happy to pick those up. In terms of the stakeholders, good point, and it's something that we need to reach out to stakeholders throughout the development and delivery of programs like these, particularly those whose impacts on directly. So there are a number of businesses in the town centre that I would say are stakeholders. So working with Huddersfield BID, the Business Improvement District, is particularly important. However, there are other stakeholders such as the civic society and others that have an interest because this is an area of conservation importance within Huddersfield Town Centre. So we have two listed buildings within the red line boundary, which is obviously the Queensgate Market and the existing library building. So we need to take on board the heritage potential of those buildings, but also the aspect of the wider town centre. Stakeholders such as the university, who've already been mentioned, are very important. But stakeholders in terms of elected members are particularly important. So clearly we've got elected members who serve the town centre in terms of their ward, but everybody in Kirklees in terms of elected member has a stake, I would say, in this programme and ensuring that it is a success access that strengthens the whole of Kirklees rather than just the town centre. So we have a range of stakeholders as well as our public sector partners, such as the police, the health services, and others, and our educational providers who have an interest within the town centre. And West Yorkshire Combined Authority, we've already been working with Mayor Tracy Brabin and her Combined Authority team to align the programmes that we're proposing to bring forward for the cultural heart, to make sure that they don't sit on their own, but they're part of a coordinated stream of investment into Huddersfield Town Centre, and that picks up some of the transport issues that I mentioned earlier, to ensure that it's not something that the council are expected to front on its own in terms of all those wider issues. So stakeholders are really important for us. In terms of the market-based information, there are a range of people, but I'll keep it brief to give you a couple of examples. In the team that we've assembled so far, we have a company called IPW and we have a company called Queensberry. They're both taking on different roles. IPW are advising us around the events space that we're looking to develop for Huddersfield Town Centre, and to ensure that that is an event space that works not just for Huddersfield, but for and not just for Kirklees, but for the region as a whole. IPW are the company that helped design and deliver the Leeds Arena, and also are working on the Bradford Live venue at the current time in Bradford, as well as many other venues up and down the country. So when I say that we've got a world-class team, it's having people like that who are working with us to ensure that we get the right offer in place for Huddersfield Town Centre. That you know, I don't like the phrase that punch above its weight, but you know what I mean. That we don't just cut our cloth according to you know what's always been the case, but we do make sure that we've got a very aspirational scheme indeed. And I'm trying not to mix too many metaphors, Chair, as I speak to you about this. The other place where we're getting advice from in the company is Queensberry. Queensberry are a company who are performing a development management role for us with regards to this arrangement, and they're looking at some of the aspects such as the food venues and how they fit in. But Queensberry are currently engaged Sheffield City Centre. They've been engaged on a number of the Manchester Corn Exchange. They've been engaged in a number of centres within London. They delivered the Newport Friars Walk and the Barnsley Glassworks, which is opening later on this week. So again, part of the top class team where we get market intelligence as to what works well, what's up to date, what's going to be successful in the future, not just now, but for the future, because we've just been through a pandemic. And I think Councillor Idell again points to a very good issue there. We don't want to just do what we think is best. We want to do what you know, the front and the leading people nationally and internationally are involved in, so that we have something that stands the test of time and is flexible enough to do so, and is good for the next 60 to 100 years, rather than just looking for the next 6 to 10 years. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if you covered the 2 points about all types of visitors being able to access Huddersfield, and then you also mentioned climate change.
All right. So in terms of all types of visitors, we as I mentioned, that we certainly want to ensure that all transport modes are available, but we also want to be inclusive in terms of people's ability to engage and to come into the town centre and feel welcomed. So we want welcoming spaces. We want people, if people need safe spaces, we would like those to be designed in. Changing places, we would like those to be designed in as well. So that those types of facilities that unfortunately many town centres across the country, not just here in Kirklees, but across the country, have seen those unfortunately close or been eroded over time. This is an opportunity for us to have an inclusive town centre. I used that word in my introduction, and I use it advisedly because I think, you know, you can't just say it. you've got to do it. You've got to ensure that you design in the welcoming factor, so that if somebody needs the changing place, for instance, it's there for them. It's accessible. If somebody needs to come on the bus, while they don't have mobility obstacles put in their way to get to the cultural heart. So that's the wider travel planning that I think needs to take place to make sure that this is a really successful, inclusive development for all. And in terms of the wider climate change issue, I would say that, I've mentioned a number of things there in terms of transport planning, the built form of the energy use. Those are the keys for me. But I think what we need to do is then not take our foot. I'm not going to say. I was about to say take our foot off the gas. That's just the wrong analogy to use with this one. But not to hold back on this. But we need to keep looking at as the scheme develops. How can we make sure that this is a net zero scheme in the main? If we can do that, what are the implications of that? Because there will be financial implications, and we need to make sure that Cabinet are well aware and that members as a whole understand what it takes to deliver the climate aspiration. But that's an issue of priorities, isn't it? And that's where the decision making comes in from elected members. Absolutely, and you talked about the financial aspects, but the longer term sustainability issues, if we don't get this right now, we're kind of seeing this around the world, aren't we? So great. I've got John and Andrew, and then we're going to move on after that. So John.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a lot of quite a few things, but they're a bit random in terms of my comments. So apologies if it does kind of jump a bit all over the place. I've been making notes as we've been talking. I was going to start with a bit of a grump. I was expecting today to get some more information about the museum, because we were promised that the public consultation that was undertaken, we would get a report on the feedback on that and what the council is proposing to do on that. That's clearly not here today, and this is, as I think both David said, very much a technical discussion. But I just want to put that on record that my expectation was this was coming back to us, and it is something we need to have cited and be coming through scrutiny, and I am disappointed by that. But I'll leave that one there because it isn't part of this discussion really, but it was when I knew the cultural heart was on the agenda. That's what I thought we were going to be talking about before I saw the papers. Just a couple of points on place shaping and urban design, and that's a huge request that we are ambitious. If you talk to people about Huddersfield at the moment and the built form, they'll talk to you about the George Hotel or the estate buildings, or the station and George Square. They won't talk to you about Civic Centre 3 or the bus station. So if we are going to be building new, can we make sure that built form is something we can be proud of, and that isn't just bland and basic, and it's something that people will want to look at. So it's not just the contents of the buildings, it's the actual built form, because that helps to shape a place. That creates a good design for a town centre, and that states our ambition as well. I was pleased to see the reference on a similar line to high quality urban park. When the blueprint was first done back, it seems like an awful long time ago, I helped out with some of the place-based consultations we held with various groups across the town centre. And I remember one of the feedback that really stuck with me, which was from an elderly lady from Age UK, who talked about the park and the pictures that she's seen. She said, it just looks like a big open space. It'll just be a wind-blown space. And certainly the early designs that we've done, it doesn't show anything. It just does look like a big empty space that's possibly grassed. So I'm pleased that you're talking about high-quality urban park. If you look at Greenhead Park, and there are other examples, I come from Birkenhead. The Central Park in Birkenhead is another perfect example of how we used to build fantastic parks that had a reason to go to them and were something you would go and visit. What I don't want is just a big grassed empty space, because again, that's not going to be used, and it will actually attract antisocial behaviour rather than the right sorts of things. So on that urban design and place shaping, please can we be very ambitious, and let's build something we can be proud of in 100 years' time, not something that's going to look tired and neglected after 20 years, like a lot of modern design does. I'm glad, David, that in one of your responses you picked up on stakeholders about councillors, because I was going to ask about what about councils being at the heart of the cultural heart? Because it does seem to be missing from the report, and it did seem to be missing from the presentation. Can we make sure that those plans, because everything I ever see stops at Waterloo and never looks at the wider piece coming out to the rest of the Huddersfield town. It is one of the biggest towns around. On the cultural heart again, there wasn't, unless I've missed it, there wasn't any real reference or citing of, you know, what I think sits outside the red line boundary, which is Lawrence Batley, which obviously is a crucial part of our cultural heart. And we need to make sure that we are being very, very clear throughout about how that links in. Because what we don't want to have is that at the best on the periphery of this, given the investment we've already made in that centre. On the programme management side of this, you know, I was pleased to see some of that. You know, as you know, this is a bit of my background, and I'm really pleased to put some rigour around that. I would ask for regular updates to Scrutiny. I'm not necessarily saying like this where you guys have to come along, but maybe quarterly if there's a report provided to us. You know, it could even just be a written report that we note, not necessarily something, so we can see as it is progressing, so that we have an opportunity, if we see things that we're not entirely comfortable of, we've got an opportunity to raise that flag and say, can we have a bit more information on this, please? So I would request that. We've talked a lot about our climate change ambitions, our move to net zero, and how we make sure that that sustainability and that move to net zero is built into our design at an early stage. I'd ask for one other thing as well, and that's just a thought about surface water, because increasingly we are seeing, you know, problems with flooding in various areas. If we end up with redesigning our town centre where there is a lot of built environment, you may find that we have pooling water or problems with water, and we just need to think about that now at this early stage, how we build it so that we can cope with if there are deluges, as we are starting to get. And then just a final comment again on when I did the place standard stuff. One of the groups that I met with and spoke with was the visual impaired group that meet at Brian Jackson House. And we really need to make sure that we go back and engage with them throughout, because they have very, very different needs from the rest of us. And some of the stuff that we don't notice can prevent them from being able to navigate around the town centre because of the varying level of their sight. So that's just a final. And then just finally, you talked about engaging a group to help with looking at a variety of options, including you know, the food offer, and I'd just like to make myself available for helping with that, investigating food offers if it's needed. Thank you.
Can I put my name on the list for that as well, please? Because I think we should all take a part in that. So, David, did you want to come back on those, or does someone else want to come back?
Only to say that I take on board the comments. There's a number of points that Councillor Taylor has made there, and you know, I take them on board, and I think they're all helpful. The one that I would point to in terms of the high quality urban park, I think that's absolutely essential. If you look at places which have done it well in different ways, I would say Bradford, Sheffield, and Barnsley are all examples of places that have done it well. But the key to it as well that Bradford and Sheffield have demonstrated, Barnsley's too soon, is ensuring that they are maintained, that they are managed and maintained, because they get very, very heavily used in town centres, and they can quickly become places like, dare I say it, Manchester Piccadilly Gardens. You know, there's a lot of money spent on Piccadilly Gardens, and if you go there, I don't think Manchester City Council are particularly proud of Piccadilly Gardens at the present time, and you know, it isn't necessarily a welcoming and inviting space. So you can get them wrong if you don't maintain them. So as well as the design, I would say the management and maintenance. But yeah, we'll do that. And if we do have any study tours around food options, then Councillor Taylor, yeah, we'll remember that you're interested.
Thank you. Okay, Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, John, for raising LBT. It's better you raise it than I do as chair of the theatre. A couple of points, really. Really pleased to see all the rigour. The rigour is often in these programmes driven around the hardware, and people get very focused on the physical infrastructure. Pleasing to hear some of the things around using other consultants around how the event space would be used and so on and so forth. But I am a bit concerned there's more about the hardware than there is about the software. Because I think it could be a lot more about communications and engagement, and those are really important. That, I mean, you talked about all those stakeholders, and I know you've got it's the biggest stakeholder is Joe Public, and they need to understand what we're doing and our aspiration and our hopes and plans for it, and be taken along the journey with us. Otherwise, we're going to have something which is fantastic, where people are saying, you know, done to me rather than done with me. So I think, I mentioned the transport plan, David. That's another bit of the software that needs to be as much part of the programme as what you're going to build and how you're going to build it. So I think that's the danger with these things, is it's not ever easy, but it's the focus, because you can see the bricks being laid or the concrete being poured. That becomes the focus of attention, and that's what all the program project templates are designed for. There's a massive amount of other stuff which needs to be taken as absolutely as seriously and given as much rigour alongside as the physical creation. I was glad you mentioned maintenance and revenue. Another common problem is we think about the capital cost and not about the ongoing sustainability of the operation, and having enough budget funding so we can maintain things properly and look after them properly. And that just needs to be part of how you're working forward. And a very small point, I'm sure it's in your thinking, you're going to demolish a lot of concrete in this process. That's got a lot of embedded CO2 in it. That's going to be disposed of, hopefully, in a way which means it'll have some benefit to the environment rather than damage to the environment. It would be really good if you could avoid using any more concrete, because it does the embedded CO2. So I think we talk a lot about net zero, but it ought to be net zero over the lifetime, not just net zero in operation. If we're going to make the sort of progress we need to make on climate change. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew, and I very much agree with your point on concrete as well. You know, there are other sustainable options out there as well these days, but I think that's a good point. I see Paul's hand is up, so Councillor Davis, do you want to come back on some of those?
Yeah, I was just going to come back on the comms and engagement, and absolutely, you're absolutely right, Andrew. This is something we've talked about, and you know, very recently, actually yesterday, we were having discussions on this. It's crucial that we take people with us, that we find ways of engaging people and involving people, and we have to take, in my view, and again, I know David agrees with this, we have to take an approach which is, you know, quite different from the normal sort of press releases and you know, more sort of what I would call staged consultation processes, all of which have a place, but we have to find a way of doing this in a much more if you like, organic way, you know, a way in which people feel comfortable and they can see that they can connect with what we're doing. And I think that's going to be multifaceted. It will absolutely need the right expertise, and that's something that we are talking about. And that's not diminishing in any shape or form. Our communications team, they sit within my portfolio and they do a great job, the team. But I think it is absolutely crucial. So full agreement with you, and it is certainly something that we're focusing on at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone want to say anything on the other points that were raised?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean, I can quickly come back on those, Chair, if it's helpful. In terms of the biggest stakeholder being Joe Public, I think that speaks to what Councillor Davies is saying there, and ensuring that we have the right comms arrangements in place. And we've recognised that, given particular contributions from Councillor Davies recently, to ensure that we need to move beyond into the softer stuff that Andrew was talking about there, rather than yes, it's important to get all the the nuts and bolts that I talked about right, but take people with us along the way and having a great comms process so that we take the public with us as well, and they feel involved and proud of the end result is really important. The transport plan I've already talked about being central to the programme. I'd agree with that, and the maintenance I've talked about as well, and the issue around demolishing. Some of the concrete we can't demolish because it's listed. So the Queensgate building is listed, and that's concrete. It has a concrete megastructure as well as some concrete panels that are of particular importance in its listing status. So we will absolutely ensure that they are preserved and that they are part and parcel of the future. But I take the point that demolition inevitably, and we've already demolished the car park, the multi-storey car park, and there is likely to be further demolition, as you can read into from what we've been talking about, and the point is correct that there are exacting arrangements around that demolition process, but also we will require the transporting of materials away from site and the effective use of those materials. Usually, as far as possible, you put them into local hardcore programs for road building and those kinds of things, so that they are used appropriately and aren't transported great distances. So embedded concrete is a big issue, and the building methods that Andrew talked about there go to the heart of what I've said around ensuring that we have an effective and sustainable approach for the future developments, that we don't add further problems because of the materials that we choose and the building methods that we choose, that we do those wisely with a lifetime carbon cost built into this. And I think that's probably from Councillor Iredale's and others' comments, is probably something that we need to think about in terms of how do we measure success on this one. Councillor Bolt started off with that as well. The lifetime impact is very important, and then you can have those trade-off discussions as councillors as to, well, actually, what is your priority here? Because we can deliver anything clearly, but we need to ensure that there is a clear lead. So the measuring the carbon and the lifetime carbon impact is very, very important.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm just mindful of time, so Gwen and Yusra, if we can take your points together, and then we've still got 2 items to come as well. So Gwen, do you want to go first, and then Yusra, if you just follow up after her, if that's okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Harpreet, and thank you, David, for your presentation and answering all the questions. I've done a bit of a John. I've just scribbled loads of notes down as we've gone through, so forgive me while I just scan to make sure that I cross everything off as I've asked. Obviously, this is a really, really exciting project. It's early days, but what's going to make it unique? What's going to make these improvements in Huddersfield unique compared to other large towns? What is actually going to be the draw for people to say, yeah, I want to go to Huddersfield? And I always go off on a tangent, and we've been talking about the cultural heart. I've even wrote down maybe a heart-shaped park. Maybe that is the heart of the town. I don't know. So, and also I'm a bit old-fashioned, and I'd like to see maybe in the town hall a 3D model of what the plans are going to be, so people can go. Not everybody's got IT skills, not everybody's got access to computers, and I remember people would flood to Batley Town Hall to look at planning applications, to look at the 3D models, and I'd like to see something like that. Different way of consultating with other members of the public who haven't got the IT skills. I wrote down about energy, obviously solar power. I might get booed down. Wind turbines. I love wind turbines. I think they're absolutely fantastic. Also, another point was about help and support to existing businesses once the work does commence. Obviously, we're quite a way off that as well. Martin mentioned about accessible parking as well in the town centre. Obviously, we need to encourage people to use public transport, be it the bus or train. But it's like people going to the football and rugby matches. What's going to be in the town that will then draw people into the town after the game and stop longer in the town? A lot of people with town centres are worried that they don't feel safe. So obviously you'll be consulting with the police and Safer Kirklees, Alison Lowe's Deputy Mayor of West Yorkshire. But I think it's important talking to local groups as well, like the Street Angels. the street angels are really, really important. I believe Robert went out with them when him and Christine were married. I went out with them. They're wonderful. And I think we should be talking to people like that who've got the feet on the ground as well. And we talked about obviously people with different disabilities using the town centre to be able to make it more accessible for them. I wrote down the Guide Dogs Association. I've recently become aware that in Naples there is a bridge and it has Braille on it. So blind people can read the Braille and it describes the view. So maybe that's we could look at as well, because we're going to have this wonderful new town centre. Some people won't be able to see it. So maybe we'll look at little things like that, Braille on certain parts of the town, so people can feel and read and know what actually is in the view. And one final comment was, I'm being a bit personal here, but I remember years ago there were plans for a waterfront marina for narrowboats. Has there been any talk with the Canal and River Trust? Because I believe we need more residential and visitor moorings in Huddersfield. People on narrowboats, as I well know, like to visit different places and they would love to stop in Huddersfield and look around the town, but there's no moorings, so they will sail on. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And I'll bring Yusra in. Yusra?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, David and David, for that report there. I'm not going to repeat some of the things that a lot of people have mentioned, so I'm going to try and go through the points that haven't been potentially mentioned. Obviously, just to re-emphasise disabled access and users, that's very important. I've had a lot of emails around that, around people's concerns around how the new town centres, whether it's Huddersfield or further afield in Batley, how they're going to be friendly to all types of users. So I just want to re-emphasise that point. And this might sound like a quirky idea, but I want people just to have their attention for a second. When you go into a supermarket, the way they design the supermarket is that you follow through the entire supermarket and you purchase things. Is there any way where, I know the focus is on Huddersfield and the cultural heart of Huddersfield, is there any way we can kind of bring the entire idea together so that people don't just end up in Huddersfield but are travelling through the town into the north of Kirklees as well? And there's a bit of psychology behind that, but I'll let you guys try to think of the solutions if it's possible to try and get people to draw out of Huddersfield and go further afield into the smaller towns as well and experience their cultural side. I know that we've got a lot of cultural heritages, and I don't just want people just to remain in Huddersfield, but to go a bit further out than that. And the marketing aspect as well, I think it's a fantastic idea what we've got in terms of moving forward, but obviously we need to market it quite well, and I think that is going to be a huge sort of another aspect of it, not just the design, but actual design is one thing, but actually drawing people in to say this is what we've got here when it first starts off is quite important for us to consider as well. That's it really.
Thank you. Apologies, I can see there's still some hands up, but I'm going to move on now because we've still got 2 items to cover. So if does anyone want to make any final points? Yes, David?
I can just respond quickly to those points that both councillors have made, if you wish, Chair.
Yes, yeah, go ahead.
Yep. Okay, so in terms of increasing the dwell time in the town centre, that's something that we absolutely want to do by the right offer being put in place. And I think Councillor Lowe's comment links into also Councillor Hussein's comments there as to how you do that, because there is quite a lot of subtlety actually in terms of design of a town centre and doing it well. And it's not, it might feel like it's an element of serendipity that people find themselves in interesting places in town centre. A lot of the time that's through design, through really understanding the catchment of people who are going to use the town centre and what they're going to want to find there and making it easy for them to do so. But I think Councillor Hussein makes a really good point about, well, how do you then use the town centre to get people curious about the rest of the district and go and find themselves in other parts of the district? We can do that through the museum offer, and as Councillor Taylor says, that once we get to the stage where we've got detail around that. We can start to understand, well, how does that not just tell the story of Kirklees, but explore and get people interested, because we're having a visitor destination that links to other visitor destinations across Kirklees is no bad thing. What I've done elsewhere as well is through design, particularly around park spaces, is bringing the rural character into the urban area. So I've done that in the past, where you bring the Peak District into the town centre, and you have elements of that as part and parcel of the design of a town centre. So there are many ways that we can look at the points that both councillors make to ensure that this is a really quite a unique town centre, and one that is distinctly Huddersfield rather than any place else. So that's one thing you do to make it a USP. And I think the other thing is making sure that we keep with we've got a whole load of great businesses in Huddersfield town centre, and that's been one of the stalwarts over the many years. They might have changed over years, some of them, but people are able to establish businesses, and we want that to be the case in the future. So we don't want to detract from business. We want to ensure that we have flourishing independence in Huddersfield town centre, and I think this proposal should help with that, because we increase visitor numbers in the daytime and into the night time, and that links into the further unique selling point, because with a focus on the event space, in terms of the indoor event space, but also the outdoor space. If we do that well, we create a town centre that can be used for so many different events and can become a lively, vibrant hub that feels safe at all points of the day and into the evening, and one that's welcoming for people. So that would feel very different. And when town centres and city centres have got that right, it completely transforms the dynamic, particularly when you link in with the university. And when I was working in Bradford, we did that with City Park, and we it might not be everybody's cup of tea, but I can tell you now it absolutely transformed the way that people experience Bradford Town City Centre when it was opened up, and it became a city centre that suddenly people across the whole of the city and district saw it as their city centre, whereas before that, my experience was that there were just a few communities used it as their city centre. We need to have the transformative kind of change and USP here, going back to Councillor Lowe's comment as we had over in Bradford many years ago on that one. In terms of the neighbourhood, there's a lot of ideas that Councillor Lowe has said there. I think they're all great, and I think it's something that we'll take on board and have a look at, see whether or not those are the things that that we can adapt to moving forward. And I'll leave it there, Chair, because I know you wanted to move on. Thank you very much. And Councillor McBride, do you want to say anything very quickly?
Just very quickly.
Yeah.
I was very impressed by the contribution of the members, and you reminded us and brought us back to earth to talk about all users, about the blind, the elderly, disabled and the young. And I think when we're thinking in the grand scheme of things, we're losing sight of who are the people who are actually going to use the town centres, and we've got to bear these people very much in mind. And in design and planning, they've got to be incorporated within that process. Also, I think it was useful to remind us about how does Huddersfield, if we're going to make Huddersfield important, how does it link to other towns? I think its road links are reasonably good, but it's got a fantastic rail link, and TransPennine is a way of opening Huddersfield out. And as TransPennine is improved, Huddersfield becomes an even more important centre for activity, and you will see it used much more. Therefore, the town becomes more exciting, becomes more active, and therefore much more used. So all those things fit together. So thank you just for those few minutes.
Thank you very much. So I'll just quickly sum up the key points that were made. So we had some stuff around sustainability and social value. So making sure longer term that we've got not longer term, but that we've got the metrics in place around sustainability and social value, and also early on thinking about the deliverables on those 2 points. Included in that is the work that seems to already be going on around travel plans and active travel in particular, ensuring that we've got the required car parking provision, but obviously that there's other routes into the town centre that doesn't just rely on cars. There's a point on comms and engagement, so making sure we're very clear on the vision and the purpose of the plans. Accountability was mentioned earlier on, so just making sure that there is that elected accountability throughout the project. Inclusivity in the town centre, making sure that's built in early on, and there was a lot around the built form, place shaping, high quality urban park, and making it a place that we're all proud to live and work in. Make sure the councillors are at the heart of the programme. When we talked about putting in a request around regular updates, which could be done in writing to Scrutiny. And there was something I can't read. Oh, the point on the Lawrence Batley Theatre, I think, is a very good one. And perhaps there should be more emphasis on that in part of this programme. And Yusra mentioned the point about the links to other towns, which again, I think many of us agree with. So thank you very much, everybody, for that point. I'm going to move on now. I can still see there's some hands up, but I've got to move on to the next. So our next item is on winter maintenance and the link to planning. I think I saw Sue Proctor, are you there?
I'm here, yes, thank you, Councillor Paul. I'm here.
I just wanted to quickly say we did receive apologies from Councillor Mather, who's not available for this item. So Sue, I'll pass on to you.
Well, I'm going to immediately pass over to Mark, if that's all right, because Mark's going to do a brief introduction and then Catherine's going to take us through the presentation.
Yeah, thanks. So thank you, Chair. Just on behalf of my colleagues, we appreciate and value the opportunity to attend this afternoon's Economy and Neighbourhood Scrutiny panel meeting to update members on both the Council's winter maintenance service and the considerations that are made by planning colleagues with regard to winter maintenance. My name is Mark Scarr. I'm Head of Highways for Kirklees Council. I'm just going to introduce a couple of my colleagues who are on the meeting this afternoon. So obviously Sue's here, you've met Sue, she's our Service Director for Highways and Operational Services. Catherine Broadbent is Operations Manager in Highways for Highway Assets, and that includes winter maintenance policy. And also from within the planning team, we've got Chris Dowes, who's Lead Officer for Highway Development Management within the planning team. One of our other operational managers, Chris Johnson, who is responsible for highway operations and the delivery of winter maintenance. Unfortunately, Chris can't be here this week. Today's on leave this week, but he has contributed to the report that hopefully you've been able to see and read in advance of the meeting. I'm going to hand over to Catherine now. Catherine has got a wealth of knowledge and experience around delivery of highways response to severe weather, including winter maintenance within Kirklees. And she's going to take you through a presentation which will pick up some of the key points that's contained within the report that's been circulated, and also pick up some of the planning aspects. So I'll hand over to Catherine.
Thank you, Mark. Jodie, could you share the presentation for us, please? Is Jodie there? Yeah, thank you. Okay, so yeah, we're here to talk to you about winter, and I'm aware that the Scrutiny panel particularly wanted some information about the planning and the links to winter. Jodie, next slide, please. Okay, so a little bit of background, and what I've done, I've pulled out the salient points from the report that was tabled with yourselves. So a bit of background. So we operate the winter operations over 27 weeks, and you've got the dates in front of you. We have been working on 24 weeks, but we've extended that to 27 weeks to help us operationally and to better define the difference between summer and winter. I mean, those of you that sort of endured the lateness of winter this time, when it sort of dribbled on into May and it was quite cold, that did present a few problems to us because we were sort of neither winter nor summer. So we've decided this time to extend it, and that better reflects the need for our operations. I can confirm that we have our normal 25,000 tonnes of grit already in stock. We actually stock more than the recommended requirements. And that is because we believe that it's important that we have a good amount of contingency in there, and that we're not beholden to any supply issues, because as people need additional salt, everybody tends to need additional salt, and there can be logistics problems in getting that. So we feel more comfortable, like the rest of the West Yorkshire local authorities, to actually have more than the minimum requirement. And what we do operate is a mutual aid arrangement. So if anybody is getting a little bit low, we will sort of share about. The recommendation from the Audit Commission is that between 24 and 38% of your road network should be treated as a priority when you are gritting. I think what we have done is said, because our road network has significant amounts of sort of steep slopes, and it's on high ground, I mean, it's some lovely countryside and some really attractive high ground, but nevertheless that makes it more difficult for people to travel around during the winter. So we have elected to go well above the national average, and we are currently at 53% of our road network, that's the adopted road network, of course, is actually treated as a priority and what we call our normal gritting route. And what you've got in front of you there is areas that we target to create those 31 routes that we endeavour to complete within 2 hours of leaving the depot. And as it says there, private streets are the responsibility of the owners of those streets. We actually use a mix of dedicated gritters that we hire in, but also we have what we call our unibody vehicles. So during the rest of the year, they dismount the gritter box, and they're used for our normal operations in highways. And then when winter arrives, then they're switched over to the gritters that you see out and about. And we are certainly well in the planning stage now of preparing for winter 21-22, despite the fact it's beautiful hot weather. This isn't unusual for us. We have to plan ahead. Next slide, please. We have 4 weather stations, and we also have a specialist forecaster company who provide us with the data and a forecast of what is coming. So it's it's well above your sort of BBC and Meteor Group forecasts that members of the public get, and we also are able to see the weather coming in. Particularly, it comes in from the west. If it comes in from the east, then we're sort of it's more likely to be beast from the east type weather. But yes, we can see that coming in on radar, and what we do is we use that weather forecast and actually plan what we intend to do over the next few hours, and we'll review that on a regular basis. We have a number of staff who are highly trained in decision making, and they will be making those decisions sort of throughout the 24 hours and are often woken up during the night. And on those marginal nights, what we also have is night patrols, and they are out sort of throughout the night, checking what the conditions are like, doing some localised gritting and reporting back to the senior decision maker. We will grit about 5 AM, so that's before rush hour. Gritter vehicles get stuck in rush hour traffic just like anybody else does, and then we'll grit at 6 PM, and then as necessary during the day, depending on the weather conditions. But of course, with grit, you actually need vehicles to mix that in and to melt it so that it does actually work. Next slide, please. From time to time, we have a number of days of quite severe weather, and that is when we will switch our operations to the normal activities that I've just outlined to something that is more challenging for us and more challenging for our communities. And that's where we actually switch to prioritising life and limb. And so what we do is we will switch to main roads, and we will plough up and down those main roads during severe weather, and that keeps those main roads going as best we can. And then the emergency services will be triaging people who need to get to hospital or need urgent care, and they will let us know, and we will work with them to get to those people so that they get the care and the support that they actually need. And as things start to sort of settle down, what we will then do is draw on the operational services and other teams within the council, and we will then start to switch to getting back to business as normal as much as possible. So we target 60 towns and villages, as it says there, any key locations that are high risk, and we have staff from the street sweepers, sometimes the bin staff. We have the wardens and some of our own staff that will go and start to clear these 60 towns and villages and key locations. And as resources permit, we will then go and help, those people who are, have important events, whether it's weddings, funerals, exams. We support the schools, particularly at that time of year, because we don't want people to be sort of disadvantaged or in very challenging situations. And we will also do the car parks, but that is when we've managed to finish everything else and we've got a stable position on the road network. Next slide, please. Right. Actually, key to severe weather operations is keeping people informed and actually getting people prepared for bad weather. Now, the Met Office and the BBC and others are actually now really focusing on this. So, we get the severe weather reports and the warnings. But what we have elected to do is to get people prepared and encouraging them to prepare as much as they can themselves. So, as I said, it's a beautiful summer day and it's not the kind of thing that you want to be thinking about what's the winter weather like. But if you can get your car sorted out, that you have got the right equipment, that you've got your salt, and that you work out where the buses are like to go if you don't want to get your car out. So all those kinds of things, hints and tips and helpful advice and driving condition, driving to the conditions tips, we start off putting those on our website, and we inform people that our gritters are out checking the routes. Are you ready? Winter is coming along. And once winter does arrive, then we inform people of the decisions that we're making, what the gritters are doing, night patrol, and we find that at Kirklees Winter Twitter is a very well used and well informed route for people to inform us what's going on, for us to inform them, and there's a real collection and a sort of real community around that particular social media site. Next slide, please. So we're very keen to involve communities, and as I've said, we have got council resources that we are able to draw on, but actually the community are a great resource that can not only help themselves but help vulnerable people. We've currently we're actually down to about 24 groups of community gritting teams, and we're about to do an engagement exercise with them. To see if we're providing them with the right information, the right support, what can we do differently to help them, and how can we potentially build up additional ones. These kind of groups tend to come a lot to the fore when you have some really severe winter weather, so beast from the east type of weather, and people start to come forward and say, can I help, can I help? We have a great community of farmers who are engaged through the NFU and are actually insured through the NFU as well, and they help in rural areas, sort of keeping businesses going and supporting the smaller communities. Next slide, please. So yes, half 500,000 people in Kirklees. That's a massive community that if everybody can do just a little bit for themselves, it would make a massive difference to an effort to deal with the nature that presents itself. 1,450 grit bins in Kirklees. That is hugely more than any other district that I've come across in terms of the route that we have. And councillors are able to move those grit bins around to meet their local priorities. And we are about to do an engagement exercise with councillors as we start to sort of prepare those grit bins for this next winter. And so we'll be going out shortly and asking councillors if they would like any moving to meet their local priorities and provide them with plans and information. We're keen to remind people that these grit bins are for public use on the public roads and pavements, not for their personal use. And there's plenty of places now that sell grit, you know, the local DIY stores where they can pick up grit and deal with their own private areas. We fill at the beginning of the season. It takes about 3 weeks actually to get round. We'll fill before Christmas, and we'll also fill after particularly bad winter events as well. So, you know, there should be a grit bin somewhere near you that you can use to help. Next slide, please. One concern a lot of people have is that they think if they clear the bit of pavement outside their property that they'll be sued, and I can assure you that has never happened. I mean, we've researched this, and the Met Office and others have actually set out some suggestions as to how to do that, and assuring you that you won't be sued. So it's quite all right, providing you're sensible about it and you don't pour boiling water on the, when you've cleared your pavement, that it's fine, and it would really help if more people did that. And we provide messages to schools, so we have quite a big effort of get yourselves ready in schools, and also if schools are having to be closed, then the council operates a system of keeping people informed. And any roads that have to be closed over the Pennines, we work very closely with our colleagues in the other districts, and again we'll have the VMS signs up and running and showing which are closed, and it's also on the website. And just finally, next slide please, Jodie. Just wanted to respond to the question about planning. So we have to focus our normal gritting route on the main roads and the bus routes and the steeper roads, the 53%. And when new planning developments do come forward, we don't specifically look at that from a routine winter maintenance point of view, but Will and his team will be looking at that from a waste collection point of view, and our vehicles are a bit smaller than that. And sort of during severe weather, and when severe weather has passed, we will be doing all our secondary routes. So that's all the 57% that's left, and we try and tie that in with bins, because often the operational services bins team have been disrupted by winter weather. So we try and tie that together so that they can clear as many of the backlog of bins as possible. Next slide, please. So over to yourselves for any questions.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that presentation, Catherine. So we'll move straight to questions. So John.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Catherine, for that. And a number of comments, and you know, I was the one who asked that we brought this to scrutiny because I have some concerns around it. We have ambitious housing plans across the district. There are significant houses being built, and in some places, significant developments being built. And if I've read this right, what we're saying is we've no plans to do any gritting in any of those new developments. So do we know how many additional houses each year are not going to get any support from the council because they're paying quite large council tax bills? And are we clear with new people that when they move into the district, we're going to tell them they're on their own? Because that's effectively what we're saying here. So that's my first point. My second point is there was a reference on slide 4 about maintaining essential services, e.g. hospitals, health centres, etc. I've asked for the health centre in my ward to be gritted, the approach to it to be gritted, and I'm told it's not on a priority route. So if I want the health centre to be gritted so people can get to it safely, I've got to give up somewhere else in my ward. So we're clearly not treating all health centres as essential services, because the one in my ward, the Shepley one, is not, the road approaching it is not gritted. And I find that quite astonishing that the response was, well, I've got to stop gritting somewhere else if I want the health centre to be a safe place for people to be able to get to in severe weather. And then again on grit boxes, it's fine to say we can move grit boxes around, but when you're building more houses in the ward and when you're building new developments, what are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to then support those new residents? If there's no additional capacity, you're not building in an increase each year to reflect the growth in housing in the district. What are we as ward council supposed to do? Just say to those new residents, great to have you in our ward, great to have you in Kirklees, sorry, we're not going to help you. I don't think that's an acceptable response that we're getting at the moment. And I would ask that the service takes this away and thinks again. So when I talk about the linkage to planning, it is literally that. If we are planning to grow the number of households in the district, we ought to be planning to grow the response we have for winter maintenance. They should be at least to maintain the same percentage that we're addressing, if not increase it. And clearly that's not happening. I'll leave it there for the moment.
Okay, thank you. Catherine, did you want to come back on that, or Sue?
I think does Sue or Mark want to come back on that?
Okay, I'll start. So yes, in response, Councillor Taylor, to the developments, so there are no plans to put gritting route, new housing developments and onto gritting routes in much the same way as existing housing developments or housing estates are not on gritting routes. As Catherine's explained, we have 53% of the network is gritted, and that's for the benefit of everybody who lives in Kirklees, but it doesn't extend into housing developments, and that's pretty common across the country and across Yorkshire and West Yorkshire. It's the position of being able to actually get to those places in a reasonable time when we know that we've got a snow or ice event, and there is a capacity, there is a limit to the capacity of being able to get out and what we can actually service. The issue that we do have in housing developments as well is the parked cars and actually having access to those areas, but also the running over of those areas by vehicles, in that gritting is only part of the equation. It's actually that running over it that is the other part of the equation. So it needs to have a certain volume of vehicles who actually run in that salt and grit into the ice and snow to actually make it effective. It's not perfect. No one says that it's perfect. No one says that we can manage our service in a way that ensures that everybody can do everything that they want when they want to do it in bad weather conditions. We do as much as we can within the resources that we've got. We don't have a growth item in the budget for winter service or for severe weather, and that may well be something that we need to take away. But at the moment, we don't have that growth item, and that's not because the service doesn't want to do it. It's that it isn't a growth item in budgets. We do have access to reserves for when we have, so this year we had an extended season, so we did have access to reserves to be able to supplement the budget that we've got for winter service. But it is that's the situation that we have. So you did outline that quite accurately, in that we don't make that offer to new housing developments. On the side with your essential service and the access to the health centre in Shepley, I'm sorry, I don't know the particulars of that. I don't know whether Catherine wants to pick that one up. And grit boxes, as Catherine's outlined, we have substantially more grit boxes across the borough than any of our partner or neighbouring authorities. You'll appreciate I came from Lancashire, which is a county authority. In Lancashire, in the whole of Lancashire, we have just over 2,500 grit boxes, which is covering 12 districts and a significantly larger area than we've got in Kirklees. We have a large covering of grit boxes, but we absolutely appreciate that is a conversation that's very, very difficult, probably not one that you want to go into, which is the movement of those grit boxes to areas that actually might have a higher priority once a housing development or a circumstances is made aware.
Can I come back? Yeah.
Yes.
People keep quoting 53%. It won't be 53%, will it? Because it'll be declining year on year, because you're not doing any of the new roads. And when we talk about, if I talk about Dewsbury Riverside or the Bradley development, you're telling me we're not going to grit any of that? I mean, the one in Riverside is virtually a new little town, and we're not going to grit any of it because you claim that we're not tackling new housing developments. I think you need to go away and look at that again. And on the grit boxes, I'd like you to come with me perhaps to Flockton, explain to the residents of Flockton, where we built probably 300 extra houses, but we've not provided any more grit. So when we say it's communities helping themselves, they can't help themselves if they don't have the facilities there to do it. And I'd like you to tell me which village I should go to and tell them we're taking grit boxes away from them to give them to the new developments in Flockton. I can't do that. You as a service need to be responding to the fact that we are building lots more houses, and with those lots more houses comes additional demand, and you can't just throw it back at us councillors and say it's down to us to prioritise. I'm sorry, that's not an acceptable answer.
And I appreciate that, Councillor Taylor. I think you're making a really good point. But also within the service, we've got to prioritise, and we simply do not have the manpower or the vehicles to keep growing the service. And whilst I say 53% of the highway, we've been asked to report the current situation. That's the current situation. That's the agreed priority network that was agreed through the processes of governance as to what that needs to be. It may well be that we need to review that and look at the criteria for increasing that, but that's not done on the back of just the housing development as a spot check. It needs to be a full service or a full priority network review, which is something that we could take away and do, that will go through that approvals process. It's not something that the service just decides on a whim. It is backed up by the usage of those networks, but also our capacity to deliver. As Catherine's already outlined, we already bring in quite a lot of external support in delivering the priority network that we've got at the moment. We would need to look at the capacity of both external and internal services to increase that delivery. It's not something that we've got lots of people sitting on a shelf waiting to do it. We use the capacity that we've got to its extent as far as we possibly can at the moment. But I don't disagree with the points that you're making, Councillor Taylor. It is a really hard choice to make. But on the back of that, what we have had in the previous season, the season that we've just gone through, I know that there were some areas where we needed additional interventions because of particular circumstances. But in the main, the service kept the network running. And that's what we aim at doing, is keeping the network running, avoiding accidents and keeping people safe. That's different to allowing everybody to do everything that they want to do when they want to do it.
So I'll just come back in. I mean, we've got, thankfully, Councillor Davis is still with us because Councillor Mather wasn't able to attend. It's her portfolio. So I can just ask you, Paul, to take this back. That there is a problem here. That as we have an ambition to build more and more houses, we're going to have less and less people that support it. And us as councillors get more and more pressure, which we can't answer. And quite frankly, if I'm asked the question again, I'm going to point them in the direction of the cabinet member, because at the end of the day, what you're saying to me is you're going to do nothing to help us. We're going ask these people to pay council tax. We're going to take money off people as they move into the district, but we're not thinking about how we provide them with any support whatsoever, even a grit box.
Certainly, as you said, I've been listening very intently to the conversation, and as you can imagine, John, it's not a subject that's unknown to myself as a ward councillor as well. So and it's really difficult, and you know, I absolutely appreciate what Sue's saying, because she's responding as you would expect in terms of what we've got laid down at the moment in terms of resources and you know, the scheme of work that's already agreed. But yeah, I will follow up certainly, and you know, relate this back to Councillor Mather as well. In terms of whether we can do anything, I don't know at this stage, but certainly I'll pick that up, and I'll also, you know, have that discussion. I'm more than happy to have that discussion with Colin Parr as well. We've talked when it wasn't my portfolio, but I was sort of linked into it. Myself and Colin talked about you know, a number of the things that Sue's outlined about how we can help the community as well. You know, not just to, if you like, abdicate responsibility, but help in the community, because I know certainly in my ward, a number of the communities were very interested in doing something to help them as well. So I think that's something worth looking at. But yeah, as I said, I have been listening all the way through. I'll be frank. I don't think there's an easy answer to this one, but yeah, I'll pick it up and I'll follow through on that one, John. No problem.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Davis. I'm just mindful of time, so I'm going to move on to Robert. Robert, do you want to come in?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Catherine. In explaining how with your service has great difficulty, never fully appreciated, and can never do all we require. I personally would like a personal note saying when I've got to put my de-icer in our screen wash, because I always get caught every year. But two more serious points. The first one is this no growth item in the budgets. That is where us councillors can do something, because we can, in February, in budget time, put in an extra, I don't know, whatever it requires, but so that we can get more done. But the bit I would like to get more done on more is primary schools. They're never on the main road. They're always down side roads. They get plenty of traffic, and we're asking every day, young children and mothers walking down absolutely appalling little areas, and that's where I would like it. And I suspect I'm going to get the same answer as John got with regard to his centre. But some of it is our responsible, I believe. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure who wants to respond to that one.
Yeah, I can come in here. Yeah, we did an exercise 2 or 3 years ago actually to work out how many schools were on the normal gritting routes, and we got to 66% of all schools are within 50 metres of a gritting route. But I appreciate that primary schools tend to be more on side roads than the high schools. A number of primary schools do actually have we have grit bins that we fill for them, and they do have, I think, parents and others who will come out and put some grit down. And certainly we, dare I say it, we encourage as part of the planning, you know, make sure that you've got the right clothes on, make sure you've got the right shoes and the Wellingtons on. And so that children can get up there to school and enjoy the snow. Come on, it's an enjoyable experience, isn't it? Throwing a bit of snow around and building a snowman, and let them enjoy that.
Thank you, Catherine. So I think I've got Gwen next. Gwen.
Thanks, Harpreet, and thank you for that presentation. And just picking up immediately what Catherine says, let kids go out and enjoy snow. Let them play in it. Let them learn through play. And when we were kids, I mean, people are saying now, winter, folk don't know what winters are. When we used to have 6-foot snow drifts at Sidert Road and you'd be jumping in them, you'd have snow piled at the side of the pimps for absolute weeks. We don't get winters like that anymore. And when we had area committee and the winter gritting was on the agenda, that was the most popular area committee agenda item ever. Folk used to love the winter gritting agenda item. I just want to pick up on what John said, grit bins. People must feel safe, I think, when they have a grit bin on their street. I don't know what it is. And I do worry about the new developments as well, not having grit bins, because a lot of the new housing developments are actually on cul-de-sacs. So they're not going to get gritted as well. And one problem with grit bins, obviously, once you fill them, I know people who've come along with the car and emptied all the grit out of the grit bin and put it in back of the car boot. But we've already got a gentleman in our ward, as usual, will know, and without mentioning his actual name, he's actually got a winter-related name, which is very appropriate. And he's already wanting a grit bin on the street where he lives. And I'm sorry, woe betide if I was to say to some residents, I'm going to move your grit bin to somebody else's street. Oh, I couldn't do it. There'd be absolute hell on if we were to suggest that. So, and where I live, the nearest grit bin to me, it's about probably half a mile away. So where all these grit bins are, I'd like to actually see a ward map for Batley West to actually see where all the grit bins are, out of curiosity, because that's a lot of grit bins, 1,450. I don't know where they're allocated actually in our ward, so I'd like to see a map as well where they all are. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Catherine?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Lowe. The engagement that we're about to start on with councillors will actually include a location map and a list of where all those grit bins are, so that you've got that opportunity if you wish to go out. And yeah, I do agree with you. I think having a grit bin is great, but actually it needs someone on the street, or a number of people on the street, that actually go and move the grit. And I know from personal experience, there's 2 or 3 people that do it and the rest just drive on by and complain. So you actually need both. And we do assess whether grit's actually being taken from the box, and in some cases we hardly need to fill up some grit bins because they're just not being used at all. They're just there as an ornament, really.
Sorry, can I just come in quickly? Is it possible that there's a padlock and you have to have like a key holder for that grit bin? Stop people pinching it.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, that, isn't it? I mean, they're open for public use, and we have to take on trust, and the vast majority are okay, but I'm afraid we do have people that pinch it, and people who will grit the drive but not even bother to grit pavements. I'd just like to come back to Councillor Taylor, actually. Quite a lot of these big developments now have management companies that actually will do the shared areas, will maintain the shared areas, and quite a number of those estates and management companies, there is an arrangement where those management companies will provide grit bins for those residents as part of the fee that they pay every year, and it's a tiny part of the fee. I know that from my own experience. So that could be something that could be sort of pursued, particularly on the larger developments.
Okay, thank you very much. Mark, did you want to come in at all?
No, I was just picking up on the point about the grit bins, and I can understand the anxiety around making sure that they're used exclusively on that particular location, and not people taking that grit away, and the fact that the demand almost seems to outstrip supply. Just in terms of numbers, we did a bit of research prior to today's meeting on grit bins in other local authorities, and interesting that Rotherham have got 360 grit bins, Barnsley 550, Calderdale 600. So our 1,450 is considerably more than some of the neighbouring authorities have. So from that point of view, we do provide more grit bins than some of the adjoining authorities.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I guess we also need to take in consideration population sizes of the different authorities, but it does seem to be quite a difference. So thanks for that as well. Yeah, thank you. So I've got Yusra and I've got Martin. I can't see any more hands up. So if no one else wants to come in, I'll take those two, and then we've got another item coming as well. So if that's all right. So I've got Yusra and then Martin.
Thank you for that report there, Sue, Catherine and Mark. Yeah, I think it was, I'm not going to repeat what everyone has said. Sorry, I can't even get my words out. But I think the grit bins is Gwen's already highlighted the cases that we come across around that. I understand that other local authorities do have lesser bins for whatever reason than we have, considering more, and that's really good start to hear. However, that is a concern that I do come across during the winter times, especially with public service workers. I had a case last year where there was public service workers that were on a side road, and there was a couple of them working for various authorities, whether it's police or Yorkshire Ambulance or the NHS, and those side roads were not being gritted, so they couldn't get to work safely. I'm just wondering, what is the criteria that we set? Because I know you mentioned gritting main roads and things like that, but what about certain side roads like B roads and, you know, certain side roads? Are we gritting them, or do we just stick to the main roads generally?
Thanks, Yusra. Catherine?
Yes, so when we have a severe weather event, so where snow is continuing to lie, once we have stabilised the normal gritting route, the 53%, we will then start to look at how we can move on to all the rest of the route, the 47%, and we do that in a planned way. And as I mentioned earlier, what we'll try and do is tie that in with the bins as well, so that we have a coordinated approach and work our way around the district. That does take, a number of days to complete that exercise, but we certainly don't leave people on their own, particularly if the snow and the ice is lying for any time.
Okay,
So
thank
can I just
you.
quickly
Yeah.
come back on that?
Yeah.
So does that mean, Catherine, that if, for example, if a constituent did contact me and one of the roads was not gritted for whatever reason, is there that capacity there, especially if there's a number of people working for certain authorities that need to get to work? Would we be able to bring that to your attention with the view that that would be resolved, or would there be the solution of trying to find a grit bin to grit that nearby road?
I think what I'd say to you is potentially a number of solutions, and certainly where we become aware of, significant numbers of sort of key workers and sort of emergency staff that aren't able to get out, and they do actually contact us if we've got the resources, because that is key to it, because we have to focus on life and limb, particularly where we've got a severe weather event. Then we'll certainly consider helping them, and we are able to deploy some hand gritting teams, the 60 towns and villages that I talked about earlier.
Okay, thank you. And then I'll take Martin finally. Martin?
Thanks, Chair. Because you know how helpful I am to everybody, councillors have already got the map with grit routes and grit bins on them. We've got a resource on our computers called Compass Mapping, and you can bring up any level of stuff. I was just having a look for Gwen, see if I could immediately find the nearest one to where you are. But so you can overlay that, you can pull that up. So yeah, we don't need to print out more paper. We can have a look at that. And I'm pleased to see that Nahid is now showing up as being on the call. So hopefully she's picked up some of the points that we're raising. There's been a lot of good points. The key, I think, about this is, and it's not directed at the staff, it's the policy. What we may want to do as a scrutiny group is to look at, is the policy fit for purpose? I mean, John's highlighted the Dewsbury Riverside. The policy and resources are going to have to be looked at, because that development will feature a school, health centre and various other things, which, as we've just heard, will demand gritting. And therefore, are we going to turn around to Dewsbury South members and say, because you've got 4,000 houses as a new development, which has got a school, etc., you have to sacrifice your area, because that's what we're saying to others. One thing that's not been mentioned, we've talked about farmers and things, is it still feasible for communities to get grit piles? So where you don't have a grit bin in an area, can communities request that a pile of grit is dropped at a location so they can help themselves? The point that Catherine made very early on, and come back to it, is something that I think is essential to understand when we're talking about active travel. It's the vehicle activation of rock salt is needed for it to be effective, because when councils have been developing active travel routes, they've not been taking this into account. There was a £29 million Leeds Bradford superhighway. Officers at Wyker were saying, "Oh, the road gritter will resolve that in winter." No, because you don't get the vehicle activation on cycle routes to make them safe. And Leeds and Bradford have had to invest in a de-icing machine, which is like a scarab sweeper with a little tank that goes and sprays. So when we're creating these routes and putting money into the Canal and Rivers Trust estate, doing towpaths up, they're unsafe in winter for the very reasons that we just mentioned. And that's an implication on our active travel issues. With the one exception, Catherine, the Bradley Fartown cycle route, which Highways designed on its own before we worked with Sustrans, is, I believe, adopted highway. So yes, you should be gritting that in winter anyway. But we need to look at that as a wider remit. We've talked about winter maintenance and linked to planning. And one thing which hasn't been linked to planning, other than the mention by Catherine that the management, some builders now get a cop out by paying people for management fees, and there's a big issue there that the cost of those are not regulated and it can become very punitive, is why this council hasn't got a supplementary planning document or a Section 106 policy to make developers pay. I've got 166 houses going on Murfield Moor near on Murfield 25. The driveway is quite steep for that. There's another element of it that's an industrial estate. So they're not going to get any gritting. They're not going to be able to get out on the road. And what you see, and we see it down in Liversedge, is where you have those estates which don't get gritted, people leave their vehicles on the main road, which is a road safety problem. And it also means that the gritters are not effectively gritting the main roads. So if we have a Section 106 policy that for every development above a certain size, in the same way that Section 106 applies to leisure facilities, the developer will provide X number of bins per X number of houses with a commuted sum to fill it up. And as John says, over the period of time, the council tax that they pay will then kick in to contribute to that, because you've got people who are paying. So yeah, I think we need to look at that. I think looking at something positive from this chair, yeah, we just asked to note this. It's a scrutiny panel to note and consider the content. Well, we've noted and constantly won't do it. So I think a positive recommendation from this, having heard everything, the key issues are off the gritting route, is for the Cabinet to bring forward a policy to deal with this for the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. John, do you want to come back on this point?
Yeah, just a final comment on it, really. I support what Martin said. I also think we ought to make a recommendation that the Cabinet considers whether the budget for more winter maintenance is adequate. But just on the management companies, I think that's a huge big red herring, because in the vast majority of cases, these roads are adopted by the authority and therefore they become the responsibility of the Highways Authority. They're not the responsibility of the management companies. So I don't know where that one came from, but that clearly is not right, because if the roads are adopted by the highway, it's not the responsibility of the maintenance company to maintain those roads or to grit them or to do anything to them. So we can't be just going, well, we'll just assume they'll sort that problem out. The problem remains with us if they're adopted highway. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone want to come back on those final points, and then we'll wrap up?
Yeah, I think on the grit piles, so rather than in grit bins, we do have some we do provide some grit piles, but that's where we work with the community to understand how they're being used, so that they're for the community, and we need a community lead in those, and those are some of the conversations that Catherine was referring to that we will be having, and it is looking at how we can best use that resource, but also it's being mindful of our ability to keep refreshing those stores, in that there is a limit to what the manpower is that we can do, and I think what we've tried to explain in the volume of grit stores that we have at the moment, the grit bins, takes us 3 weeks to actually go around all of those with the resources that we've got, at the same time as we are managing the other services, so at the same time as we're delivering highway repairs and dealing with the snow and ice ourselves on the priority routes. So it is really difficult to prioritise. I absolutely appreciate that, but we as the service have to prioritise work as well within the resources that we do. But all the comments that have been made are really helpful and useful, and we absolutely understand where members are coming from on this and where local residents have expectations of services to deliver. But I also wanted to recognise that the service actually does do a really good job in really difficult circumstances, and that they get out there and deliver as much as they can within the resources that we've got. So absolutely, if it needs a policy review, then absolutely that's something that we can take forward. But it's getting, you know, the traction for that moving on, and that the consequence of that, if it is a financial consequence, that needs to be picked up as well. But also, Councillor Bolt, you mentioned the cycleways and active travel, and actually as we're preparing for this, you know, for this presentation today and this report coming forward, that's one of the areas that we did see as being one of those growth areas that we need to look at, even though I've already said I'm contradicting myself that there's no growth, but it is one of those new demands on us as a highway authority, and it's on that climate agenda, in that if we are really going to be delivering active travel and mean it, then we also have to resource it. It's not enough just to put, you know, routeways in. There needs to be a maintenance regime that goes with those, and that's part of that wider strategy that we'll be delivering. On the planning side, we've got Chris in the room. I'm sorry, Chris, I'm going to pick on you because I'm not a planner, so I'm not sure of the scope of what we can include within a section 106. I was wondering, Chris, if you would be able to come in there.
I'll do my best, Sue. Thanks. It's Chris Downs here, Highway Development Management. I'm not a planner either. I'm a highway engineer, but my understanding, talking to colleagues in planning, is that providing grit bins and is not, in planning terms, is not required to make the development acceptable, so it wouldn't meet the planning tests. Now, I hear what Councillor Bolt said, and I think I would need to defer to somebody in planning policy to get the definitive view on that. But my understanding, speaking to colleagues in planning, is that it doesn't make the planning test to make a development acceptable in planning terms, and it is a winter maintenance issue, which is a highway issue rather than a planning issue. That's not trying to pass the buck. That's just the information that I've been given. I think it's certainly something that probably wants clarifying with planning policy to see whether that absolutely is the case, or whether there could be an SPD contribution, or there could be a planning document produced with that effect. But that's the understanding that I have from a highways perspective, working within planning.
But it's definitely something that we can take away and have a look at, and that might not be the solution, the means to the solution, but it's one that we need to explore, and there may well be other solutions that we can bring in.
Okay, thank you, Sue. I'm going to just round up now on some of the key points that were made. So I think members...
Sorry, Chair, could I just clarify that? Having been involved in producing...
Martin, I need to move on now.
To clarify what the highways officers have said, they're not planning, as they said.
No,
I've been involved in producing an SPD on getting a levy from developers. It can be done where there's a will, which is why my recommendation was that we ask the Cabinet to do it.
Martin, I'm bringing up the points now on the summary, so if you could let me finish, and then we've got another item yet. So in terms of the key points that have been made from members, so I think we would agree as members that we've requested a network review, so the criteria that is set for gritting. The other point was around the whether it should be considered as a growth item in the budget. I think most members here have got a certain view on that, so we would request that Cabinet look into that. And then also on the point on the Chris said that he's had some initial conversations, but we would like to get that clarified around the SPD, and whether that's something that could be considered or during a Section 106 agreement in planning as well, around gritting routes, grit bins. So if that could be looked into more widely as well, so we could get some clarification on that. There was the point about the active travel, which Martin raised as well. So it's worth if we could have a look into that as well. So those, I think, are the key points. There was a specific point that John made about Shepley Health Centre, which if someone could get back to John on that point about the health centre as well, that would be helpful. Yep. So if that's okay, I'm going to move on now. I think we've covered the main points. So thank you everybody for joining us, and we'll move on to the next item.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the next item is the work programme. Does anyone have any comments on the work programme? No? Okay, so we're going to move on to item 10. I've just got to read something out here. So item 10 is the waste disposal contract commercial offer. So this report and item contains confidential information and is recommended to be taken in private because the information contained is considered to be exempt information under Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, as amended by the Local Government (Access to Information Variation Order 2006. It's considered that it would not be in the public interest to disclose the information contained in the report, as disclosure could adversely affect overall ability to obtain value for money, compromise the commercial confidentiality and intellectual property of organisations mentioned in the report. It may impact further legal action and is considered to outweigh the public interest in disclosing information, including greater accountability, transparency in spending public money, and openness in council decision making. So, members, could we vote to resolve that under Section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting during the consideration of the following item on the waste disposal contract commercial offer, on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act. Can members agree we will meet in private? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Everyone's happy with that?
Can you note, Chair, that I'm not voting on this again for the reasons I've said before, that it requires it requires a decision to be made, which we are not allowed to make a decision, are we? It's a key decision to exclude the public. It's a legal decision, and it comes back to the core that I've said before, that if we're meeting virtually, should we be making decisions?
We have received guidance from the governance, the head of governance, that we can continue to do this as a virtual meeting. And I'm just going to get a quick clarification that because we need agreement from all members to move forward. So Jodie or Councillor Smidge, I don't know if your views can come in and just say that we are okay to go into private session.
We are allowed to go into private session to discuss the item, but all members do have to agree. I think officers did prepare a small public statement that can be discussed in the public domain. In the event that the whole panel don't agree to go into the private session, then that is the only information that could be discussed, unfortunately. But the guidance provided by the head of governance about virtual meetings, we are allowed to continue holding scrutiny meetings virtually, and that includes in private session.
Okay, now that that's been considered, I want to ask again, are all members happy to go into private session?
I'll leave the meeting at this point, Chair. Thanks. I'm still not happy with that. I think there's a conflict, and as a personal point, I'll leave the meeting at this time. Thanks.
Thank you. Jodie, is that all okay?
I believe so. I might have to just try and seek further clarity on it.
Okay. Yes, and Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I apologise, I was slightly late at the very beginning of the meeting, but I think I've got an interest to declare.
Okay, yes.
So I'm not sure what sort of interest it is, so I'll take guidance on that. But I am the alternative director for sewage recycling and recovering Kirklees Limited. So I'm appointed onto that. I'm the alternative director to Councillor Mather. So I think I ought to mention that. I don't think it causes me any reason to withdraw from the meeting. I think it's a non-pecuniary, or describe it as another interest, but I just think it's important to say that. And I filled the form in.
Fantastic, thank you, Councillor Taylor. Jodie's just getting clarification on the point, because I might just have to ask you all again now that Councillor Baltz has formally left the meeting. I might just have to get another point just from all of you to say that you're happy to go into private session. So I'll tell you what, I'll ask again while she's on hold. So then, because these are the members we've got here now. So to all the panel members that are currently in the meeting, yeah, you're all happy for us to go into private session? Yes. Okay. From what I can see, yeah. Okay. So if you just hold on until we get Jodie back, so we can just clarify that in public. Yeah, Councillor Hussain, did you want to ask a question?
Can we have a quick rest break? Is that okay?
Yes.
5 minutes.
Good point, actually. I want to take a couple of minutes or whatever.
A couple of minutes. Thank you, Councillor Hussain. I was wondering whether I was going to make it through the next item.
It's fine. I just need to rest break quickly.
Thank you. Go for it. Yeah, good point. Okay, so I have had clarification. So we can continue into private session because the reasons for exception are clear and the panel that are now present agree. So what we're going to do now, panel members, is we're going to move into private session. So thank you to the members of public who have joined us so far, and goodbye.